I have an exercise for you. It is white to play in the following position, which is from the game of former world champion Magnus Carlsen against young Krzysztof Duda, played in Zagreb at the Super United Rapid tournament, part of the Grand Chess Tour. And it's probably one of the most amazing moves Magnus Carlsen has played this year. And I'm challenging you. Can you find what white should do here? I will give you a bit of time to think over it. I will show you the entire game. And at the end of the video, we are coming across this exact position again. And we will see what Magnus Carlsen played here. But before we do that, I would like to also ask you to support the channel by like this video, by share it among your friends. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm counting on your support and I thank you in advance for doing so. Let's now have a look at the entire game and just make sure you find the best move for white in this position. Magnus played the move 1d4 and after knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, d5, Magnus goes for g3, leading to the Catalan opening. White is going to place the bishop on g2 and Duda goes for the so-called open variation by taking the pawn on c4. D takes c4 played, bishop g2, and now black plays the move c5. It's one of the many ways of trying to tackle the Catalan, but this is a very solid, reliable possibility as white is getting challenged in the center. Black is ready to swap pawns and will eventually aim for more simplifications. White castled, knight c6, developing the knight, and now the queen goes out to a4, pinning the knight on c6. This is all very well-known theory with the idea that if black would take the pawn on d4, which was not played for a good reason, white is going to recapture with the knight. And now you're not really recommended to take with the queen here because they will follow bishop takes c6 and white is going to regain material with a nice initiative. So instead, the main theoretical continuation is to unpin the knight. And you do that by means of the move bishop d7. White's going to take the pawn with the queen. C takes d4, knight takes d4. So the c and d file are empty now, no more pawns. Black is going to play rook c8. So the rook is opposing the queen. Knight c3, knight takes d4, queen takes d4. With the idea to get the bishop out to c5. Very active play. The rook is supporting the bishop. Bishop is attacking the queen. Queen got to go away. Queen h4. Very sensible move. And now the main idea in a lot of Catalans, in fact, is to neutralize white's powerful bishop on g2, which is usually exerting a lot of pressure along this diagonal. And therefore, black goes for the move bishop to c6, offering the exchange of these bishops, which happened in the game. Bishop takes, rook takes, and now the rook comes over to the d file, attacking the queen. And the queen is likely going to move. And the most precise continuation here is the move queen a5. Queen b6 has also been played in a number of top level games, but queen a5 is more precise. And I'm going to show you why. Because one idea for white here could be, look at this, to play the move bishop h6, intending to deflect the g pawn so that you're able to take the knight in case black is going to take on h6, you take with the queen on f6. If black is going to castle, you may consider bishop takes g7, opening up the king's position. And it's very important. If you take with the king, there is queen to g5, king goes away, and then you take with check on f6. White is a pawn up with a devastating attack. But the reason the queen is on a5 instead of b6 is that rather than taking this bishop, you take first on f2 with check. King takes f2 and now king takes g7. Materials even, and look at this queen. It's preventing the white queen from coming to g5. So this is all very interesting opening stuff. If you're interested in playing it, you got to know these little details. Instead of bishop h6, bishop g5 on the board, attacking the knight right away. Bishop goes back to e7, supporting that knight on f6. And in a lot of games, white played here the move knight e4, but Magnus thinks differently and felt, okay, I'm going to start with the move rook a to c1. Bringing the rook into the game. And black has a number of possibilities and thought, okay, let's play the move h6. Attacking the bishop, not that you're really threatening to take with the h-pawn, because then the rook on h8 can be captured. But look again, that queen on a5 is also attacking the bishop. But h6 is probably not the best move. I should mention that instead, castling kingside is probably a wiser decision. And you will soon see why castling is a far safer continuation. Like in many openings, you got to complete your development by bringing your king into safety. But h6 was played, and now look at what Magnus did. He didn't move his bishop away, but played the move knight e4 anyway. So that the knight is also protecting the bishop. So the queen is not recommended to take the bishop. h6, g5 runs into queen takes h8. And in case of knight takes e4, you do have bishop takes e7. And in fact, this is going to lead to the game. It's more or less a transposition. Because in the game, black started by taking the rook on c1. Rooks were swapped. And only now the knight decided to take on e4. Because if not, white is about to take on f6 himself. The knight on f6 is attacked 3 times by queen, bishop and knight, and it's defended only twice. So knight takes e4, bishop takes e7, and now we see the big difference with the king being stuck in the middle, and that would have of course not been the case had black castled instead. And look what Duda did now. He decided to bring the queen in, queen d2. Now the game is heating up. The queen is attacking the rook and of course also a number of pawns, but the rook, it's the main problem here for white. But this is the exact position I showed you at the start of this video, and I hope that you have come up with a brilliant move. The brilliant move, the only move Magnus Carlsen managed to find. Let's try to understand what is happening. As I said, the rook is hanging, but if you go, for instance, rook c8 check, which looks very logical. The bishop cannot be taken, it's defended by the queen. So the king has only one square, it can go to d7, it's attacking the rook, but the rook can be taken on h8. But this is not played in the game because there is a massive counterattack here. With the move queen e1, black seizes the initiative. It's a rook down, king got to go to g2, but it's a mating attack. Queen takes f2. If the king goes into the corner, it's queen f1 with checkmate. If the king goes up to h3, you give a check first on f1. King can only go to g4, and now it's queen f5 with checkmate. That would have been a big turnaround. Didn't happen in the game, so you got to understand that the rook cannot go to c8. And you also don't want to allow black to capture the rook on c1 with check. If you move the rook away, for instance, let's say you go to f1, the rook is safe, supporting the king, but I think black is just able to capture that pawn on e2, and black is gonna stay in the game. There's no time for white to generate new threats. But now you're curious. I know that you want to see what Magnus did. And Magnus played an amazing move. He played here the move bishop to g5. That's probably not a move you had been thinking of yourself, as this square is covered by the knight, queen and pawn. But let's understand what the idea is. First of all, you're attacking the queen, and the queen doesn't have the time to take the rook now because the bishop indirectly defends the rook. Then the big question is, of course, are you able now to, for instance, take with the queen the bishop? Then there is a queen takes g5, h takes g5, and now rook c8 is possible, as at the end of the line the rook can be taken, white is an exchange up and will win the game. Also after h takes g5, there is queen takes h8 and it's game over. So in the game, the other capture was played here. I mean, you can move the queen away, but there are a lot of problems, like for instance the knight is hanging, and later on black also got to reckon with rook c8 ideas anyway. So knight takes g5 was played, but now it's rook c8 check, king e7, and the rook can be taken. And the big difference is, by inserting that move bishop g5 earlier, that knight is no longer on e4, because had the knight been on e4, then we had this line with queen e1 followed by queen takes f2 with check, and that's thanks to that knight on e4, which is targeting the pawn on f2. Now black is just an exchange down, but the game is not over yet. Queen takes e2, grabbing a pawn. And okay, materially speaking, things are not too bad, and white's king is also quite vulnerable. But it's white's turn. White is giving a check here, queen b4. If you go to d7, it's queen takes b7 with check. That's not recommended. King f6 was played by Duda. And now the queen goes back to f4. That's an excellent decision. You're attacking the king. And the king goes to g6. You have to be very careful here, because black is in fact threatening something. If you play, for instance, h4, attacking the knight, trying to remove an important defender, there is knight h3, and black is winning thanks to this knight fork. Don't do that. And if you think, okay, I'm an exchange up, I'm looking for ways to simplify, offering the exchange of queens, you also got it wrong, because there is knight f3 check. If you go king to g2, then it's knight to e1 with check. If you go king h3, it's even queen h5 with checkmate, as the knight takes away the g2 square. But the king should go back to g1, and now after knight f3 we will have a repetition. Of course, that is not what Magnus didn't want to allow. He didn't go for this line. I should also mention that you cannot avoid the repetition here, because if king h1, it's even mate on f1. So let's go back to the game. Knight h3 is a threat. Knight f3 is also a move to reckon with. How to neutralize these two moves? Well, very simple. You play king g2, and there are no good knight forks. There are no good checks here at all. Black is continuing, plays the move e5, trying to deflect the queen, but the queen goes to e3, offering the exchange of queens. Queen takes b2. Black is getting a second pawn and is supporting the pawn on e5 with the queen, but white has different ideas. First, we are bringing up our pawn to chase the knight away. h4 is an excellent move. Knight e6, queen e4 check. King doesn't have that many great squares to go to, and that's our goal, to try to approach the black king. If you go f5 to counterattack the queen, there is queen d5, and the queen will eventually infiltrate. So black played instead king f6 right away, and now a very nice classy move by Magnus. He played rook e8. And now you may think, what is the idea? Well, you would like to play queen f3 and force the king to go back to the other side. And with rook e8, you're preventing the king is escaping via the center. Now, for instance, if you would take the pawn on a2, was not played in the game, but let me show you what could happen in that case. Then queen f3 is the exact idea. You're giving a check, king goes away, and now we play h5. That's why the h-pawn is so important here as well. If you do go back with the king to h7, it's queen f5. With check, you gotta go g6. And it's queen takes f7, knight g7, and you can give mate in various ways. H takes g6 is the nicest one. Checkmate with a pawn. Therefore, queen takes a2, not played, but look what happened. Queen b5, and this is a very tricky move. Very tricky, because if you are playing the same here, Magnus' original intention was probably to go queen f3 here. He didn't play it, because if you give a check, then all of a sudden black has a beautiful way to stop the check by playing knight f4. It's a counter check. White got to solve that one. If you take the knight, then the rook on e8 can just be taken. That is winning. Sorry, that's not winning. That's just going to be a drawish endgame, of course. So you better don't play queen f3. Therefore, rook b8 played. Queen and rook are attacking the pawn. Knight c5, protecting the pawn and attacking the queen. It's on the board. And queen d5, excellent move. The queen is dominating in the center, looking for ways to attack the knight or attack the pawn weakness. For instance, if black would play b6 to support the knight, rook b7 is a beautiful idea. Attacking the pawn on f7, and of course knight takes b7 runs into queen takes b5. That's not possible. Therefore, instead, black had to do something else. Played a6 to protect the queen, but now the main problem is there is rook f8. So white finds a different way to attack the pawn on f7. And after this move, black resigned for good reason. You cannot protect the pawn in a good way any longer. If you play knight e6, for instance, then the easiest move is queen f3. And you're going to take next on f7. And if you do protect the pawn with your queen, there is queen takes c5 and white is a rook up. So anyway, I thought this was a very nice game, of course, mainly because of that spectacular move on move 20. The move bishop g5 has it all. This is a beautiful move, typical move you can easily overlook, either playing with white or with the black pieces. But Magnus Carlsen is not the GOAT for just one reason. He has fantastic tactical skills and he showed it in this game. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching and soon we'll be back again. Bye bye.